Monday, February 19th, 2024. Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. We're going to look at democracy, party politics, elections. I personally think they're the biggest distraction out there. Distractions against what? What don't they, and by they, I mean the people who control everything, the bankers, the people at the top, the globalists, if you want to call them. While they want you to keep looking and being involved in the politics and not look at the real problem, which is the instrument that they use to make sure that you remain dependent on them. And that is, of course, the central banking national debt system, and we're going to look at that today. And I couldn't think of a better example than Donald Trump's golden sneakers or trainers. In the UK, we call them trainers. Can you imagine? You could buy 16 ounces, troy ounces of silver instead of buying those $400 sneakers. That's what I would do. You might want to buy the sneakers, but I think it's foolish. And it's another distraction. And it's even like caught my attention. I'm not saying I'm immune to all the distractions. Sometimes even I fall for it. But I would say that the best thing to do is to focus on the money. And by that, I mean, learn about it first. You don't have to be an economist. You don't have to work in finance. You could be a builder, a dentist, whatever, but you need to know about this. And I'm going to refer you to some books today. And then we're going to look at a few of the headlines that I think are important. But before we do, if you are not being distracted and you think you need to add to your gold and silver stack, yes, do your homework, go to the best dealer. But if you want to help the channel, check out my affiliates below in the description for gold and silver purchases. I vouch for them. I mean, if you add up how many years they've been in business, it's over 100 years. So they're very reputable. But as I said, do your homework, get the best price. So a lot of you have heard of this quote. Some of you might not have. And this was made by Meyer Amschel Rothschild, who's one of the scions of the Rothschild banking family. And this was made back in sometime in the middle of the 19th century. And this is what he said: "Let me issue and control a nation's money, and I care not who writes the laws." So basically, have you noticed that for decades or even for the last century, we keep getting new governments in the West? We have elections. We get Democrats or Republicans. We get conservatives or Labor, Liberal Democrat, back and forth. And yet, we're still here with the biggest national debt in the US, in the UK, and elsewhere. The biggest wealth inequality. Our currencies are going down the drain. The pound buys less and less. The dollar buys less and less. This is what he meant. You see, they want to keep you looking left, looking right. There is some hope, though. My wife was telling me that there was a by-election here in the UK, and the amount of people that showed up to vote, I forgot the term, but yeah, the amount of people that, there's a better term to describe it, was very low. So people are twigging onto it that it doesn't really matter who's in power because, like Mr. Rothschild said, you know, they're in control of everything. And I'm not talking about any ethnic or religious group here, because the bankers are, they're a diverse bunch. But what I'm talking about is the mechanism. And I'm going to recommend a book that's considered controversial. You probably never heard of it. Some of you have because you've been watching my channel. And it was written in the 50s, 1952. And it's called The Nameless War by Captain A.H.M. Ramsey. And who was he? Well, he was an MP, believe it or not, who was arrested in 1940. And why is 1940 important? Well, it's the year that Churchill became prime minister, 10th of May, 1940. So he arrested Captain Ramsey, who was an MP at the time. And why did he do that? Well, because Mr. Ramsey knew about what Mr. Rothschild had said about a century before, about the control of the money. He knew about central banking. And he knew what wars are all about, bankers' wars. And he tried to warn Neville Chamberlain, of course, to stay out of the war. And today, of course, Neville Chamberlain is called an appeaser and everything. And you might want to believe that. To be honest, sometimes it feels like I don't know the truth about history anymore because of all the lies that we're being told in the last few years. How many other lies have they been telling us from the past? So, but what it says here is that there has been an unofficial ban on the books dealing with what Captain Ramsey calls the Nameless War, the conflict which has been waged from behind the political scenes for centuries, which is still being waged, and of which very few are aware. So they're not going to teach you this at university or at school. And I think it still applies to today. And we're going to go to the section here where he talks about the Bank of England and why they created party politics. So this is from page 17. The real objective of the Glorious Revolution was achieved a few years later in 1694, when the royal consent was given for the setting up of the, and he puts it in inverted commas, Bank of England, because it's not really a bank for the English. I think that's what he means. And the institution of the national debt. This charter handed over to an anonymous committee the royal prerogative of minting money, converted the basis of wealth to gold, and enabled international moneylenders to secure their loans on the taxes of the country instead of the doubtful undertaking of some ruler or potentate, which was all the security they could previously obtain. So prior to the central bank, this is what he means. If a ruler or potentate wanted to go to war or wanted to lock people down because of a so-called, you know what, they would have to do it on the back of their own resources. They couldn't go and tax the people or put it into the national debt tab. And he continues here, he says, the political and economic union of England and Scotland was shortly afterwards forced upon Scotland, with wholesale corruption and in defiance of formal protests from every county and borough. The main objects of the union were to suppress the royal mint in Scotland and to force upon her too responsibility for the national debt. The grip of the moneylender was now complete throughout Britain. The danger was that the members of the new joint parliament, here's where it becomes interesting, would sooner or later, in the spirit of their ancestors, challenge this state of affairs. means that members of parliament would complain and would try to quash this Bank of England and the national debt. But here's the important and unfortunate part, in that we're still falling for this. To provide against this, therefore, the party system was now brought into being. Party system, frustrating true national reaction and enabling the wire pullers to divide and rule. Sounds familiar? Using their newly established financial power to ensure that their own men and their own policies should secure the limelight and sufficient support from their newspapers, pamphlets, and banking accounts to carry the day. Wow. And this is why I'm going to stop right here. This is why it's always puzzling that the general public votes for some kind of manifesto from a political party, and we end up never getting what we voted for. If anything, they do the opposite. Think back of the run-up to the Iraq War, the second Iraq War in 2003. No one really wanted to invade Iraq because we knew that it wasn't Saddam Hussein who was behind the events of 9/11. And there are huge protests in London, like I'm not sure, over 1 million people marched against that war. And despite that, they still went to war. So you see, it doesn't really matter because they're so powerful, these people, that the people who are supposedly in power, politicians, they're just like puppets. And that's what I mean by it doesn't really matter who's in power. You know, democracy, party politics is all a distraction. Does that mean that I'm for dictatorship if I'm not for democracy? Of course not. I'm for freedom of the individual. How we get there is really hard. I think Benjamin Franklin said once that democracy is two wolves and a sheep voting for lunch. And that's why you have to be you have to be aware of what's going on. And that's why you have to educate yourself, I think, to the nature of the system, to the nature of money. And with that, I'm going to recommend one book that I think could help you understand the nature of money. And it's What Has Government Done to Our Money by Murray and Rothbard. And I'm going to put a free PDF link in the description for that. For this book, I don't think there's a free PDF, but you can look that up online and buy it yourself. So, yeah, major distractions. They don't want you to know that the money is not real. And like Mr. Rothschild, sometimes they let it out in public, the truth. And recently, the central bank governor for New Zealand, he let it out. He said, we print the money and people believe it. They believe that it's true. So what's the mechanism, though, that keeps us divided? You know, it keeps us divided, but it also keeps us poor. It keeps us under their control because we never have enough money. We can never pass on our saved wealth to our children because they have all kinds of taxes. And they, on the other hand, they accumulate massive wealth. They're billionaires, trillionaires. Well, it's the fractional reserve system, which is an abomination, of course. They lend money that they don't have, and they charge interest on it, and you have to pay for it. And the government charges you taxes to pay for that. So it's like a farmer that grows wheat or something. He has to grow the wheat. He has to sell the real wheat. He can't make it up. So you can see by how over hundreds of years they accumulate so much power. with this fractional reserve central banking national debt system. And it only works if there is a national bank, a monopoly. And that's the whole problem. So how do we fight them? Well, we let people know how the system works. We talk to people. We try to teach them about the system. And that's what I try to do here. So before we look at the markets this morning, just a quick headline that I saw that I think is pertinent, significant, or important. It's this one here out of the FT. U.S. says it will act if China dumps goods on global markets. Western governments fear Beijing may try to ease domestic overcapacity with cheap exports. It's a difficult situation, isn't it? Because it says here the U.S. is most concerned about advanced manufacturing, and particularly clean energy sectors such as electric vehicles, solar panels, and lithium-ion batteries. On one hand, it would be nice to buy really cheap stuff, electric vehicles, but I guess the U.S. is concerned about how it's going to affect U.S. companies. But it's another angle here of conflict. It's not just Taiwan now, it's also like a trade war. So have to keep an eye on that, see how China will react. And yeah, let's quickly look at the markets then. It's 8:27 a.m. London time. We got gold, spot gold at 2020. It's up just over $7. The high's been 2023. And funnily enough, if you told me without me looking that gold is up $7, I would have said, well, silver's probably up like 50 cents. But no, silver for some reason is down 26 cents. And I don't know why. I think I do, but anyway, it's at 23.15. It's down 1.1%. The low's been 23.00 and the high's been 47. Dow futures up 20. NASDAQ is up 11. S&P is up about 2 points. The currencies, sterling is up 0.2%, 126.26. The euro is unchanged, 107.86. The dollar is down slightly versus the yuan at 7.21. To the other currencies, Aussie dollar is up 0.25% versus the dollar, 65.44. Dollar is down slightly versus the Canadian dollar, 134.72. And the Kiwi dollar is up 0.5% versus the dollar at 61.51. To the commodities, WTI crude is down 0.75%, just below 78. Brent is down the same, but it's trading, of course, at 82.35. And platinum, that's unchanged, trading around 909. High-grade copper is down 0.7 at 382. So maybe silver is down on the back of the base metals being a bit weaker. Maybe it's to do with this threat by the U.S. of a trade war against China. And China, of course, to produce all these things needs a lot of base metals. Who knows? To the bond market, government bond market, the 10-year yield is up 1 basis points at 4.31, and we're like knocking on the door of that 4.33 level. We need to keep an eye on that. That's an important level. Let's check UK gilt yields. The 2-year is up 4 basis points at 4.66. I would be concerned if it gets up to 5%, not personally, because I don't have any exposure to mortgages or anything. The 5-year, yeah, that's up as well, 3 basis points. That's approaching 4.20, so keep an eye on those. If you if you do have an exposure, if you have to renew your mortgage, you need to know that I think rates are going to continue to go higher. So with that, I'm going to wish you all a very good day. Take care. Bye.